Thanks for the chance to talk to you and for finding time in a really busy and interesting programme for this talk. I'm Richard Evans. I'm a Programme Manager at the Medical Research Council. And what I plan to talk to today is about MRC funding in general, a little bit about the rare disease research landscape that was mentioned in an earlier talk, and then really to talk about this new initiative, the Rare Disease Research UK research platform. So I thought I'd start with some sort of context onto what the MRC, the Medical Research Council, is and whereabouts we fund in that kind of pipeline from discovery science through to translation and patient impact. So MRC is one of the component parts of something called UK Research and Innovation. That's the largest public funder of research in the UK. So we fund a large number of universities as well as small and medium enterprises through something called Innovate UK. The MRC, as a component part of UK Research and Innovation, has a four-point mission up on the slide here, and you might expect the first one, to encourage and support research to improve human health very generally, so all types of human health, chronic diseases, common diseases, rare diseases, conditions, and so on. But we also have a mission to produce skilled researchers, to advance and disseminate knowledge and technology through to actual impacts on quality of life and economic impact. And also to promote a dialogue with the public around medical research. And just to emphasise a little bit more, I'm going to talk on the next slide about some of the funding schemes that we have, which are obviously an important part of what we do, but we do a range of other things as well, including working in partnership, often with industry, with international partners, but importantly perhaps in rare disease research, particularly with charity partners, who are very valuable, and I'll talk more about that when I talk about the platform. We also fund work on, or do work on, understanding impact to inform policy and strategy development. EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, is a core consideration in all activities. So is engagement with the wide range of stakeholders, again important in an area as complex as rare disease research. And we also work on policy development up here. But probably what most people are most interested in when they talk to a funder is the funding schemes. And so this isn't the most engaging slide, but I wanted to give you perhaps a sense of some of the schemes we have. No particular detail on here, but that's all in glorious detail on our website. But the main thing to encourage you to do is, if you're interested in any of this work, to get in touch with people at the MRC. There'll be a program manager who'll be very happy to talk to you. But this slide really divides into two areas: responsive mode, which are sort of standing schemes that are available on a predictable basis, and we expect to run these schemes every 3 times a year for the next, in perpetuity, assuming the MRC continues to exist, which we expect it would do. We have a range of schemes designed really to cover the whole range of types of research that people want to do. And the point of this being responsive mode is that this is where we are responding to ideas from the community. So not purely from, say, blue skies academics, but from the community of patients who need impacts as well. I've particularly flagged on the screen one of our research boards, the one I happen to work on, Population and Systems Medicine Board, which has flagged rare disease research as one of its 3 sort of priority areas. So just to show you the importance of rare disease research to the MRC. Rare disease research is funded across, we have 4 boards, but and all of them fund rare disease research. It's not necessarily branded as such. So please don't think that the Population and Systems Board is the only one you can go to for rare disease projects. They can come into almost all of our schemes. And very importantly, we have translational and experimental schemes, but very, very exciting to hear more about LifeArc's translational schemes, and really important that we align in that. There's so much to do that no one funder is going to be the be-all and end-all in this. And finally, in response mode, we have training and careers schemes, and the career, people don't always like the idea of a career pipeline, but the availability of people who are interested and able to do medical research, biomedical research, is clearly important across all areas, but very much so in rare disease research. The other half of this slide goes into some of our strategic investments, which is perhaps the flip side to our response mode schemes, where instead of being open to all ideas and all comers in response mode, we're funding in particular areas. So I won't label these, but I thought I'd mention some of them up on the screen here, which you might recognise. So we have a long-standing interest in advanced therapeutics. and we funded investments like the Nucleic Acid Therapy Accelerator. And that might not mean very much if you're a person living with a rare disease, but it's an investment that will hopefully generate some of the advanced therapeutics that could be very relevant in rare disease space. But importantly, these aren't labelled as rare disease investments, but they're very much doing rare disease research. A final thing to mention is also, I mentioned that MRC is part of UKRI, and Innovate UK have also funded a number of catapult centres, which particularly, I think, engage with industry and can be very relevant, again, to the rare disease space and advanced therapeutics. A couple of other things on the list are projects around the 100,000 genomes project that Genomics England ran, which, again, wasn't branded as a rare disease project, but was very much focused on rare disease and cancer cases. And then there were investments around in this, a network in the national mouse genetics space to bring together and enable work in that area. So again, the MRC is a relatively early stage funder of research, and we fund a lot in cell lines, in animal models where appropriate, and early stage human work. And these kind of investments are about making that more efficient and joined up. But the final item on the list is one that I'll talk much more about towards the end of the talk, the joint-funded MRC and NIHR Rare Disease Research Platform. And I think this is particularly important because it has the word rare disease in the title. And I understand there are sensitivities around rare diseases and rare conditions, and the language matters there. But it also matters that rare diseases have a prominence in our schemes, and that's what this platform hopefully delivers. Before I talk about the platform, I'll talk briefly about the rare disease research landscape, which Katrina very helpfully trailed earlier. Thank you. And this is aligned to the National Rare Disease Framework that I know many people in the room are well aware of and feeding into. But the project, the Rare Disease Landscape Project, was led by the Department of Health, and the report itself was published by MRC and NIHR. But it's really important, actually, that it includes the full sweep of funding, particularly MRC and NIHR. Really important, there's big charity component to that, as well as industry funding. I won't go into the process of the report, but it was intended to be a comprehensive search that identified projects that are on rare disease generally, so things like Genomics England, but also projects that were on individual rare diseases. And the report itself gives you a 5-year snapshot and is really a baseline for some of the work that will be done under the Rare Disease Framework activity. I guess, having established a baseline, we want to show impact and positive change in that baseline in years to come. This slide is the sort of infographic from that landscape report, and I won't go into all the detail. It kind of makes the same point about representing multiple funders in this space. But I thought I would emphasise some of the key discussion points that it brought out, and these you may be aware of these, or you may be interested in them. But I think they're very important, having as a baseline for what rare disease research currently looks like, based on the last 5-year snapshot. So it doesn't go back perhaps as far as it would. That might be another project. But the landscape report emphasises, as Katrina mentioned, the considerable diversity and volume of rare disease research. That's perhaps surprising, but particularly when you start to look for projects that don't mention the keyword rare, but are actually studying a disease or a condition that is rare, then there is research in that space. I think the really interesting topic there is we're funding a lot, but how much should we be funding? How big should that landscape be? And that's an important challenge, I think, to us as funders. I think just because it's a large amount doesn't mean it's sufficient. And that's, I imagine people will agree with that in the room. But the challenge around budgets, again, is something you will all be familiar with. Within the portfolio, there's a predominance of neurological research. That might simply reflect that the UK is very good at neurological research. And Professor Jungbloed's talk earlier was great and gave an example of some of that great research in the neurological space, which is not necessarily purely relevant to the neuroscience space. The report also flags that in this, I'm not sure if this kind of graph is projecting very well, but emphasises the fact that there's a large amount of research on a small number of rare diseases, and that goes back to, again, if we could agree what this landscape should look like, what should it look like? And it would be, I guess, sufficient research on all areas of rare disease. Within the project, we looked at the type of study that was being funded, and the largest number of studies were basic science, etiology, and preclinical projects. And again, that might be relevant because you need a broad base of that evidence to build translational impacts and other impacts on. But it's important to have established that baseline and to be able to discuss that. And the final point here is we identify that rare disease research is taking place across all regions of the UK. And that's heartening to see, I think, a good thing to see. It also flags up the need that I'll talk about in terms of the platform, that because of that breadth of research and scope, there's a need or an opportunity to perhaps to connect it all up and to get greater impact by doing that. And that's very much where the platform is positioned. Final things on the landscape project is that the full data set was published alongside the report, and we hope that we did that deliberately. It's good for openness and transparency to publish your data, but also we hope that it will be useful to people. It's a data set on rare disease research very generally, but it should be of interest to anyone. If you're interested in a particular rare disease or an area of rare disease research, you'll be interested in whether the disease or condition you're interested in is within that portfolio or not, and that will be a very welcome use of it. The project itself will go. The landscape report will be used to feed discussions with the community around research needs, gaps, priorities, and levers, and to look at support for networks and collaboration, which leads nicely, I think, onto the investment that the MRC and NIHR have been able to make in something that we talked about as the Rare Disease Research Platform whilst it was being developed, and now has a clear brand of rare disease research UK. As I said, it's an investment from two funders, MRC and NIHR. Very much hope that it will link up to investments from other investors, from other funders as well. In no way should it be a silo. It's meant to be a very porous, engaged investment. It's an investment of £14 million over a 5-year period, and it kicked off back in July. So hopefully you may have seen early activities from it, and if you haven't, you'll be seeing increasing activity from it over the next year. It's composed of 11 nodes and a coordinating hub, and I'll talk more about the nodes on the next slide. But the purposes of the investment are to network and enable UK rare disease research very generally, to connect up existing investments. The UK is strong in rare disease research, but there's probably more we can do by leveraging excellent investments we already have. And the platform should engage with a wide range of stakeholders, patients, people living with rare conditions, researchers, and industry. And a really important opportunity within that to support team science and to make it easier for strong teams to come together. Again, Heinz had an example of papers with very long author lists. It's great that those people came together. If we could enable that to happen more easily, then that might be impactful across many areas of rare disease research. And the final point on the slide is that we hope that this investment will be a forum or an avenue to increase the strategic positioning of the research community in the rare disease space. So, for example, to generate the case for large investments, large additional investments, pieces of infrastructure that would be of broad use across all types of rare disease research. So I'll give you a little bit more detail about how the investment operates. And I mentioned already the coordinating hub. This is being led by a team based in Newcastle University, linked to the Newcastle Trust, but also with Genetic Alliance UK as a partner. And it's very much a national neutral hub. So it has these contact details here. The website is being developed almost as we speak, and please have a look. It's probably a holding page at the moment, but in the next weeks it will be adding more and more content, and it will hopefully be a venue that will be of interest to almost everyone in the room and will become that in the next few months. But I would also encourage you to engage with the hub team, so hub@rd-research.org.uk, to engage with them about what you might need from the website or what you might like to see. Then outside of the hub, the remaining investment is in 11 nodes, and this, I'll just put them up on the screen in case you want to look through the detail. But what I've each of the sort of lozenges is representing a node on this screen. And I've kind of crudely grouped them as two that are focused on very much mechanistic aspects of some rare diseases, so a particular signaling pathway and epigenomics. A number of nodes here that are perhaps more recognizably based on groups of diseases. And these, it's great to see that these span a wide number of body systems. So all the way from the urine tract, the immune system, the cardiovascular system, the neuroscience, neurological system and neuroscience, and the renal and excretory system. But a really important group of nodes are these four, which are on very much cross-cutting issues that likely affect almost every rare disease. So I think if you don't recognize your rare disease in the middle group, that might well be because these groups will be doing work that is broader than their titles imply. They're not narrow at all. They're very porous, outward-looking, and engaged. But these nodes particularly are porous and outward-looking, and they cover issues such as lipidomic, cutting-edge technologies, lipidomics and metabolomics for the screening or detection of diseases, rare diseases. Innovative trial designs, as mentioned earlier on, there's a lot that can be done to develop trial designs or to socialize the ones that are available, perhaps engaging with regulators or industry partners as to what an appropriate route can be. There's a project on nucleic acid therapies that Heinz mentioned, and there's also a project on ethical, legal and social issues in rare disease research very generally, which should be of broad applicability. And I think there should be something that's very pleasing to see, I think, is not a slide that's deliberately sort of set up as MRC mechanistic interest over here and human patient interest over here, but actually having these nodes in the same room means that those projects will benefit from each other and there'll be cross-fertilization of their ideas. Okay. So within that investment, what you'll hopefully be seeing over time are a range of projects, deliverables, and much, much more. So there'll be particular activities, small research projects that the nodes will deliver. There will also be the sort of the basis on which future bids might be developed for more elaborate research projects. But they'll also be delivering things like workshops and meetings on a regular basis with a whole range of stakeholders. They'll be delivering projects that aren't necessarily small research projects or small pilot projects, but they're about identifying an obstacle that blocks progress in rare disease research and, where possible, removing it. And that might work across the whole investment and more generally as well. The Rare Disease Hub itself, as I've kind of flagged, will be accessible to all of you as a single point of contact for rare disease research very generally. It should be there to answer your questions around what this particular investment is doing, but also it could be a collecting area for what the UK is doing in rare disease research as well. It's not meant to be a silo or the only place to go, but it could be a really useful common site. And that hub team will be providing an annual conference and a series of workshops, and you'll be able to, I hope you'll be unable to avoid information about those in the near future. And there should be multiple opportunities for the full range of stakeholders, many of whom are in the room, to engage with that platform. So I thought I'd leave you with a slide that had the key details for that investment, so rare disease research. Particularly encourage you to get in touch with the hub team and to look at the website. If you're particularly interested in what the MRC is doing, there's a generic email address here, rarediseaseresearch@mrc.ukri, and we'd be very happy to hear from you. Please do get in touch. So I'll stop there. Thank you for your time. Very happy to answer any questions.